The Eagles have another disappointing loss this past Sunday. The Sixers opened up training camp and Ben Simmons still hasn't shown up, and the Philly season is finally wrapped up. All that coming to you on Sports Talk Philadelphia. Hello, and welcome to Sports Talk Philadelphia. I'm your host, Cale Flieger. I'm joined by my co-producer, Aiden Siksinski. How you doing, Aiden?
Doing pretty well.
We have Tyler Small back from a little absence last week, but he's back.
Happy to be back.
And we have Mike Holden. Mike?
Doing great, man.
Well, let's hop right into the talk. We're going to start with the Eagles. The Eagles played the Kansas City Chiefs this past Sunday and lost 42-30. The defense just did not look good. They allowed 6 touchdowns on 7 drives. Patrick Mahomes lit them up. He had 287 yards passing. He also had 5 touchdowns, 3 of them going to Tyreek Hill. The Eagles offense did make improvements from last week against Dallas. Jalen Hurts, 387 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. And the rookie Devontae Smith, very impressive outing, 7 receptions, 122 yards. Aiden, I want to start with you. How worrisome was watching that defense this past Sunday? I mean, this is now back-to-back weeks where the Eagles defense has given up 40-plus points. I mean, that just cannot happen to win football games.
Yeah, this defense is super concerning to me. Like you said, we've given up 40 points back-to-back weeks, which is a big problem. But once you break it down, too, we just didn't play well, put enough pressure on Mahomes to make any mistakes. We only had 1 sack. Javon Hargrave, again, with the only sack of the game, someone that's really played well for the defense. Besides that, no one else really stepped up. Steve Nelson just looked really bad as well. Second week in a row where he's given up a massive play to a wide receiver. So, yeah, there's a lot of holes in our defense right now.
Tyler, I want to go to you. I saw a stat where 2 of Tyreek Hill's touchdowns were on linebacker Eric Wilson. Now, do you think that's more of where the defensive coordinator just has to be better? I mean, Jonathan Gannon cannot be putting a linebacker on one of the fastest wide receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're going to lose that battle if you're up against a cheetah. But I think just overall, like the coaching lapses that came in this game were really what put them in. I mean, you look at this Chiefs offense as a team that is not started the way they were expecting to. Obviously, they're a Super Bowl contender, and they're looking to bounce back, obviously. You can't expect this defense to really, hold them in check. Obviously, the pressure that Aiden just talked about is a big thing. I think it comes down to Sirianni and some of these play calls, and it's a lack of aggressiveness. If you look at the 3 plays, what's the one thing that we say about the Chiefs week in, week out? You can't beat them with field goals. So going in the first quarter that it's scoreless, 4th and 3 at the Kansas City 11, you take a field goal. Then it's 14-10 second quarter, 4th and 7 at the Kansas City 7, kicking for 3. And then a third time, 21-16 in the third, 4th and goal. You don't go for any of them. You kick 3 chip shot field goals, and you just are content with trying to win that way. It's boneheaded to me. I just don't understand why they can't make any aggressive plays to try and spark a season. A win against the Chiefs where you were very much in this game throughout most, that could change your entire season if you're this Eagles team.
Yeah, Tyler, I think that was a great point that field goals cannot beat the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, the Eagles were in the red zone 5 times, and they only scored touchdowns on 2 of those drives. And 2 of those where they kicked the field goal, they actually scored a touchdown, but 2 crucial penalties, one on left tackle Andre Dillard. Well, he's still not working out well. He was a legal man down the field. Another one on fan favorite J.J. Arcega-Whiteside calling Zach Ertz's touchdown back. Mike, I want to go to you. Was the offense impressive to you this week, or it's definitely an upgrade from what we saw against the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an upgrade of what we saw last Monday night and the week before against the Niners. I think Hurts played very well. He spread the ball around. His pocket awareness was great. You know, that makeshift O-line. I think it held its ground pretty good. I mean, for what the Chiefs' D-line and the defense in general is just not good. But I think Hurts played well. Besides that, you know, a couple missed throws, especially that one to Zach Ertz in the end zone, which could have got them going early on their first drive. But I think the offense was good from the 20 to the 20. I mean, inside the red zone, they could not do anything. But I think for the most part they played better, but there's definitely some things to work on for sure.
And another thing that was very worrisome for Eagles fans was right before the game started, about an hour before game time, right tackle Lane Johnson was ruled out just for personal reasons. That left the lone starter from the Week 1 offensive starting line. Jason Kelce was by himself yet again, just like last year. And Aiden, I want to start with you on this one. How worrisome is it seeing this is the second year in a row now where it just seems like our main guys, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson, they just cannot stay healthy and can't be on the field for 16 games this season?
Yeah, it's definitely not good. I mean, when you have this many injuries this early with the offensive line, it's something's got to change at the organization standpoint. The higher-ups have to hire someone. I know that they've gone through several medical staffs at this point. But something's got to change because we cannot successfully make it through a season and expect to win games if our offensive line can't stay healthy. And I think that's part of the reason why Sirianni is sticking away from the run game is because he's nervous about how well can we run the football if we don't have a healthy offensive line.
Tyler, do you have the best player for the Eagles in week 2? I mean, still got the loss, but anyone that stood out to you during that performance?
I mean, you got to talk about the wide receiver crew. Devontae Smith obviously had an outstanding game. I think that Hurts obviously had a decent numbers game. Obviously, look at it. He put up crazy numbers, 387 yards, but that's because he had 48 attempts. He got bailed out a lot by Smith, who made a lot of plays in the open field, was targeted 10 times, brought in 7 of them for 122 yards. He's probably the only one you can really look away with. I mean, Hargrave on the defensive end, obviously, getting that sack and 2 pressures on the quarterback, Mahomes, who is kind of underrated in how tough he is to get a pressure on since he's so masterful at just floating as opposed to actually like breaking and running. So kind of like keeping him bottled up for the most part was impressive to say the least, but it's got to be Devontae Smith.
Yeah, I also think a major reason that the defense has been struggling is because Brandon Brooks, their defensive end, captain of the defense, he's been out for the year with his Achilles injury, and there's guys like Ryan Kerrigan that the Eagles signed this past season that just haven't been stepping up. Ryan Kerrigan has had 120-plus snaps on the defensive end and hasn't recorded a single tackle yet. I mean, I don't even know what you're doing on the field if you haven't recorded a tackle in 100. I think I could have got a tackle at that point. But, Mike, I'm going to go to you. Anyone that stood out for you week 2?
I think offensively, to me, I think it is Jalen Hurts. It wasn't the prettiest game. I think we were talking before, Sirianni saying that he played, I guess, one of the best games that he saw. I don't know what he was watching, but I thought Hurts did a good job. 47, again, he was a leading rusher, which is not good. I mean, he's obviously going to get rushing yards, but you kind of want, Sanders. Sanders had more attempts than last week, but you want him to be involved more and gain well as well. But I think, Hurts, and then like Tyler said, I think Devontae Smith stood out to me too. He's going to be something special, and he's proven why he was a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Hurts, I thought he was very impressive this past weekend too. And through 4 weeks of the season, per Pro Football Focus, Jalen Hurts ranks top. He's a 6th quarterback among the NFL in passing yards a game, and he's top 3 in rushing. So the man is putting up respectable numbers when as a second round pick, and people didn't really have expectations for him this season. But we're going to dive straight into the NFC East standings now. The Eagles are now tied for last place with the Giants in the NFC East, which is not a good thing to be a part of. The Cowboys still lead it, 3 wins, 1 loss. The Washington football team won this past week, and they're 2-2 now. And then the Eagles and Giants last place at 1-3. Aiden, what do you see through the NFC standings so far? Do you think the Cowboys have the clear running for this, or?
So at the end of last season, we asked the question, who do we think to win the NFC East? I had Washington winning it. The Cowboys look way more dominant than they did last year. I'm still going to stick with Washington. At this point, they're 2-2. They haven't played the Cowboys yet. But I feel like the Eagles have just completely slipped out of it at this point. They're clearly not good enough to beat the Cowboys. I don't think they're good enough to beat Washington either. And the Giants, with them having the same record as the Giants, looking about as good as the Giants do, that worries me because the Giants were not expected to be a good team this season. I thought the Eagles would be a little bit better than that, and as of right now, they haven't been.
Tyler, is there any chance that the Eagles turn this thing around in the next upcoming weeks to maybe get back into contention in the NFC East race, or do you think that now they're just going to stay towards the bottom the rest of the season?
No, and I don't think they really have that desire. I talked about it last year. This is kind of the start of a abbreviated rebuild, that you kind of have figured out your quarterback. Now you're going to go with Hurts. You have him for a couple more seasons. He's only on the contract for 4 years after he's drafted since he was a second rounder, so that kind of limits things. But this is a team that just obviously did not put their best foot forward this year. They're kind of gracing out that older offensive line that we've mentioned. The fact that they're still here is showing why there's still injury troubles with them. But I don't think they really have any chance in this division this year, and which is kind of surprising because at least last year, as Aiden was saying, Washington was a frisky team. The Giants had a phenomenal defense. Both those teams have digressed, I think. I think that Washington has not shown it defensively yet, and I think the Cowboys are kind of just going to run away with it.
Yeah, and the Eagles this upcoming Sunday are in Carolina to take on the Carolina Panthers. They are 3-1 on the season. Their 3 wins were against the Jets, Saints, and the Texans. They lost against the Cowboys last week, 36-28, but Christian McCaffrey was also out that game. That's a big deal for the Panthers because Christian McCaffrey is questionable for this week with a hamstring injury. They also have 2 wideouts that are very good, in Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, who DJ Moore is top 5 in the league in receiving yards right now. Sam Darnold, their quarterback, has looked spectacular so far this upcoming season. Mike, what is your expectations for this upcoming Sunday with the Panthers?
Yeah, that Carolina offense is very explosive. I think we have a better shot than we did against the Chiefs offense. I mean, that's, a generational offense. But Carolina has a really good offense. And, it depends if McCaffrey, questionable, we'll see if he plays. But, they got Chuba Hubbard, who's a very good rookie. We'll see what he can do. But, I think they have a much better shot, this week. Darnold, it seems like he's taking a step up with his new team. So we'll see what happens, but I have much more faith than I did against the Chiefs offense last week.
Yeah, and Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata are questionable for this upcoming Sunday. 2 big pieces of that Eagles offensive line that if they play, I can see the Eagles having a shot in this one. Before we switch up to the Sixers, let's go around the table and just talk about our score predictions for this upcoming week. Aiden?
I have Panthers winning 30-17.
Tyler?
That's actually my number, so I'll go 35-14, even worse.
Mike?
I think the Eagles pull it out 24-20.
And I got the Eagles 24-21. I think they'll come through this week and get back in that NFC East standings. Now next, let's move to the Sixers. The Sixers opened up training camp last week. Looks like every player reported but Mr. Ben Simmons. He's still holding out. Sixers have handed out him fines. They have not paid him part of his contract for missing media days, not being at training camp, all that. Tyrese Maxey is in place for him at starting point guard right now. And, I'll go to you. Do you think before the season that Ben Simmons is going to get traded, or do you think it's going to be a type of thing where we wait until the season starts, see if any other teams have injuries, teams get desperate, maybe we'll offer a little more for Ben Simmons?
Yeah, so I was hoping this wouldn't be the case, but it's turning into what happened with James Harden's saga last year, where he wanted to leave the Rockets decided to keep him into the beginning of the season and then traded him. I really would have liked Simmons to just be gone at this point. He clearly doesn't want to be in Philadelphia. The fans clearly don't want him in Philadelphia as well. So I was hoping he would have been gone at this point, but like I said, it looks like he's going to stick around at least for the beginning of the season. We'll see what happens after that.
Yeah, I also want to touch on the Sixers have had a lot of media pressers during training camp, and Embiid has had some strong comments towards Ben Simmons. The first one I want to talk about is how he said that the Sixers really built their team the past couple of years around Ben Simmons and not Embiid. And also, Ben Simmons said about Embiid that he's just not the type of playmaker that he needs to play with to be successful. Embiid on that comment, the situation is weird, it's disappointing, and it's borderline disrespectful. I feel like many people around the league view that as disrespectful. I mean, Embiid has adjusted his game for Ben Simmons. He's learned a 3-point shot so he can clear up the paint for Ben to get offensive buckets in there. And just doesn't seem like Ben wants to stay in Philly anymore. Tyler?
Yeah, and how could you blame him after comments like that? I mean, I just don't understand. Of the two, I think for the past couple of years before this drama and this saga even began, we were looking for, of one or the other, for it to be Joel Embiid that we keep and that we build around, because the fact that he has flourished, that he was an MVP finalist last year, and that he has had such a great career that he has had so far, being an upper tier scorer, let alone center, despite having one of the most contradictory point guards in the game that just kind of clogs up the lanes, and his plus minuses were down almost 10 points per game last year when Simmons was playing with him. Obviously, there's a lot of outside circumstances that came about that, but they had to surround him with shooting because he wouldn't learn how to shoot. Again, that I can't stress this enough every single week. This problem wouldn't be happening if Simmons just picked up a jump shot that he could shoot 25% from the outside on. That's all we needed, and instead it turned into this. But the fact that Joel Embiid now is getting the short end of the stick, despite him being a high caliber player, and obviously the Simmons assist numbers are great, but it doesn't tell the full story of how difficult it makes it for Embiid to actually get to work in the low post when he's not the only one there, and that it's that congested in the middle of the paint.
Yeah, I honestly just don't see any way that Ben Simmons plays another game in a Sixers uniform. Especially I saw a report right before training camp started that the key Sixers players like Tobias Harris, Matisse Thybulle, Joel Embiid, offered Ben to fly out on a jet to LA and visit with him, maybe talk things out, try to get on the same page for this upcoming season. And Ben told him not even to come to LA. So it looks like Ben is done with his career with the Sixers. And Mike, I want to go to you. Do you think that the Sixers, like Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid, want to play with Ben Simmons again for say he came back, or no?
I mean, personally, if that was me, I wouldn't. I mean, I don't know who would want to if, a player's acting like that. I mean, I think Embiid was spot on saying the past couple of years they built this team around trying to, work around Ben's needs, and it obviously hasn't, come to fruition. And if I was them, I'd feel disrespected too. It's just, I think everybody in that organization should feel disrespected. And I don't think, Ben Simmons has any, high ground or leverage in this situation. I don't think, he has, the right to be requesting a trade, but, he wants out of here, and I think the whole city of Philadelphia wants him out of here.
Yeah, the Sixers do have a lot of young talent on the roster right now. They have Tyrese Maxey, a first-round pick from last year, who showed a lot of potential. Him the other night in the first preseason game, 10 points, 1 rebound, and 3 assists. Some good. He only played around low 20 minutes, so some good numbers from Tyrese Maxey there. You also have Matisse Thybulle, who is just a beast on defense. I mean, averaged, I think, 2.5 steals per game last year. You also have Isaiah Joe, sharpshooter from Arkansas, that didn't get much playing time last year, but may be thrown into the rotation this year. And you also have Shake Milton, who we all know has his offensive spurts at times. Aiden, out of those guys I just named, do you have anyone that you think is going to break out on the bench this year? I mean, I don't think the Sixers right now really have a clear definition of who their sixth man is.
Yeah, they really don't. I think it would have been Maxey going into this season had Ben Simmons been the starting point guard. I think that's clearly not the case at this point. So I have Maxey starting. I think it's going to be a six-man by committee. I could see Isaiah Joe, as you said, getting a lot of playing time. I'm really hoping Shake Milton becomes the guy that we all want him to be. He's shown spurts in certain games about being a great scorer. There's other times where he sort of disappears. So hopefully he becomes that guy who can be a solid six-man for this team.
Yeah, the Sixers last year did come in first place in their conference, but had an early exit in the playoffs. But the Milwaukee Bucks, the previous year before they won the championship, came in first place, got booted early in the playoffs, and then the next year came back and won the championship. Tyler, what are your expectations for the Sixers this year? Do you think they're going to be at the top of the Eastern Conference again, or do you think it's going to fall off since Ben Simmons isn't there?
I think it all depends on how this saga turns out. If it really leaks into the season, as long as it looks like it's going to at this point, it's going to differ them. But this same lineup coming out there without Ben Simmons, you got to expect them to be a top 4 team in the East.
Yeah, and that's all we have for Sixers Talk this week. We'll have more next week on maybe Ben Simmons will be traded by next week. We'll see. But next we're going to move to Phillies Talk. The Phillies season has finally wrapped up. I mean, seemed like a headache of a season for most Phillies fans watching that type of baseball. But Phillies ended their season at 82-80. They finished 6.5 games behind the first-place Braves. Aiden, I want to start with you. What's your just recap of the season real quick?
Yeah, so I had them being a 500 team going into this season. There was times where they looked like they were a lot better than that. There was times where they looked a lot worse than that. So I think finishing 82-80, first winning season since 2011, obviously that's something. Missing the playoffs for 10 straight years, that's kind of bad, really bad actually. But I think there were some positives. Obviously Bryce Harper should be MVP now at the end of this season. Zach Wheeler should be in the top 10 for Cy Young. So there were certain guys who had great moments for this team. Hopefully there's some stuff that they could build off of for next year.
Yeah, I agree with that. Dave Dombrowski of the Phillies said on a media presser after the season ended, he said, "We will be aggressive this upcoming offseason. It's up to us to become creative and aggressive." And they, especially Tyler, they really have to be creative because their farm system, as we know, does not have any prospects besides maybe Bryson Stott, who might make an appearance in the MLB next year. But what do you have any free agents that they should eye next year, or what places in the field do they need to address?
It comes down to the shortstop market, obviously. I mean, you're going to look at the kind of view on Didi Gregorius was strange this year, in my opinion, but just your middle infield altogether trying to figure itself out. You tried placing from within. I mean, we didn't know what Nick Maton was going to look like now. He's kind of fallen in the same boat as Alec Boehm did, unfortunately. You talk about the prospects that came up. I mean, shout out Matt Vierling. I love that guy, and he was a great player throughout the run, but this is somebody that nobody expected to kind of come out. So when it comes to that, obviously, nobody can predict prospects as a shoe-in. There's never a can't-miss prospect, obviously. And you see this happen all the time with people just filling in and taking that position, and it's going to happen from within. But when it comes to trading capital right now, nobody wants any of these prospects. So when it comes to that matter, you kind of need to spend out of pocket. Once again, there's no salary cap in baseball. Go above and beyond if you really care about this Dave Dombrowski, because right now the Braves are in the midst of their window. They're going to be a great team for a while. The Mets will spend out of their pockets because they have a new owner. The Marlins are here to stay now that they have this young pitching coming up through the ranks. The Nationals are the only team you don't have to worry about. There's nothing really convincing me right now for this team that on this roster that is going to finish anything above fourth place.
Yeah, Aiden, are there any free agents that you see that catch your eye? I mean, I saw there's a couple, I think Javier Baez maybe, so a couple guys like that. And also, Phillies also need to shore up their bullpen because this has been 3 years in a row now where they really haven't addressed it at all and no problems have been fixed.
Yeah, so I was going through the list, some of the guys that come up to me. Bullpen, obviously, biggest one. Biggest free agent I saw, because most of the pitchers are over 30. Alex Colemay is on the market, former White Sox pitcher, pitched with a couple other teams as well. He has had 155 career saves. He had 47 for the Rays in 2017, which led baseball. I would love for the Phillies to go after him. I don't think he's going to be that high on the market, so I think it would be a low-cost, high-reward, especially the way that Ian Kennedy pitched in that closing spot, and the rest of the Phillies team too. So I think that's someone they got to look at.
Yeah, for me especially, I saw that Carlos Correa is a free agent this upcoming year at shortstop. I mean, I think that'd be a great addition to the Phillies if they can somehow come up with the money for that. Chris Bryant, who got traded to the San Francisco Giants this past year, I won't see any way that I guess he'll probably get extension with the Giants. I mean, they're the best team in baseball. Mike, I want to go to you. Is there any prospects that catch your eye that you think they're going to make the opening day roster in 2022 for the Phillies?
Yeah, like you said earlier, I hope Bryson Stott, I hope he can be on the roster because the Phillies have a history of, keeping players in the minor leagues and not bringing them up. So I hope they can give him a shot, early, and we'll see what happens with Bone. But I hope Stott, is the starting shortstop next season.
Yeah, the Phillies did announce that they are keeping manager Joe Girardi for the 2022 season. He has one more year on his contract, so I guess after that, we'll see how that happens. But that's all we have for the Phillies. Next, we're going to move to Fast Five. The first question we have is the Bears that have finally named rookie quarterback Justin Fields a starting quarterback over Andy Dalton. Finally, that he is now healthy. Mike, is this a smart move for the Bears?
Yes, I think it is. I mean, he's obviously the future. I mean, the Bears thought that when they traded up to draft him. But hopefully for the Bears fans, it's not a Mitch Trubisky type of situation. But, he is their future, and it'll be dumb just not to play him, especially over, Andy Dalton, who just is not a good QB anymore and he's injured. So I think it's a smart move for the Bears, and I think the whole fan base agrees with that as well.
Yeah, I understood the 49ers situation, kind of same as the Bears. They have a veteran quarterback above their rookie quarterback, but the 49ers also have Jimmy Garoppolo, who is a proven quarterback and can prove that he can win games in the NFL versus Andy Dalton, who's been bouncing around teams, hasn't really had he's been successful, but never really been that dominant in the NFL. Next, we're going to do This Week in Baseball with Tyler Small.
Yeah, and obviously, as I wanted to talk about some good things, I mean, Chris Taylor's walk-off home run last night, the 5th walk-off homer in an elimination game ever in baseball history. That was incredible. But I got to talk about how much I hate my Yankees. I mean, they become all in New York sports went an entire decade without a championship. That's the first time in sports history. And it has just been another failure for the team, obviously. They go to the wild card on the road. And obviously they tie with the same record as the Red Sox, who are in the middle of a rebuild right now. So the fact that they are at 2 eras and just the Red Sox won in 2018, the Yankees still are kind of stagnant in the same place. I hope this kind of puts a little bit of push into the analytic department and what they have done with this team, because they have taken what analytics is such a beautiful thing, and all the teams that are in the playoffs right now are utilizing it properly. The Yankees have done the exact opposite and have used it as an opportunity for them to just stop trying. I mean, they were 24-34 in day games because I saw it day in and day out. They just put out a bad lineup. So it's just everything from the top down needs to change, and just shout out Giancarlo Stanton. He should have 3 home runs if they're at home.
Thanks, Tyler. Next, we're going to go to the best NFL team through the first 4 weeks of the NFL season. We're going to go around the table for this one. We're going to start with Aiden.
Clearly, it's the only undefeated team left in football the years are the Cardinals. I think last week it would have been the Rams beating the Super Bowl winning Buccaneers. And then the Cardinals win against the Rams and just dominate that entire game. I think it's clearly the Cardinals. I think that they're Super Bowl favorites as of right now.
Mike?
Yeah, I think it's the Cardinals as well. I mean, they beat the team who I thought was the best team that I said on the show last week in the Rams. And, Kyler Murray's the MVP favorite right now. And, that receiving core is deadly. And that addition of A.J. Green, who everybody thought was done, he's been playing great the past couple weeks. And the addition of J.J. Watt as well. So, to me right now, it's the Cardinals.
Tyler, I'm pretty sure I know what your answer is going to be since you're a fan of them, but go
Yes,
ahead.
no, obviously I would pick the Cardinals as well. The only shout out I'm going to give right now, if we go to the AFC, Bills, Chiefs. If the Bills can get it done, which I think they absolutely could after that kind of just wash over Steelers lost week 1 and do it against the Chiefs on the road, that would put them at the forefront. But yeah, the Cardinals are the Super Bowl favorite.
Yeah, and I got to go with the Cardinals too. I mean, just the way Kyler Murray has played so far this season and the weapons he has on the outside in Christian Kirk, A.J. Green, and DeAndre Hopkins, they're just a threat in the NFL. Next, we're going to go to the worst division in the NFL right now, and I'm going to take this one. It's got to be the NFC East. I mean, back-to-back, not even back-to-back, the past 3 years, their records have just been horrendous. I mean, you see the AFC West right now and how good that division is, and you look at the NFC East, and you got the Eagles and Giants at 1-3. The Washington football team, I mean, they're 2-2, but they stink. And then we all know how the Cowboys are. They're either up or down, but it's got to be the NFC East for me. Last one, best team heading into the new NBA season. And Aiden, we're going to you for this one.
Yeah, I really wanted to go with the Bucks for this one. Suns as well. I mean, they were the two teams that made it to the finals last year. But I'm looking right now, I think it's the Lakers. The Nets have a great roster as well. The issue with the Nets is with the Kyrie situation. Don't really know if he's going to play. The Lakers have a really good top three, or big three right now with LeBron, AD, and Westbrook if they can stay healthy. They also have great shooters as well in Trevor Ariza and Malik Monk. So they've really built up that roster to compete for an NBA championship. I think that they could maybe get it done if LeBron and AD stay healthy, which is always a big question for them, especially at this point in their careers.
That is it that we have for the Fast Five. We want to thank everyone for watching Sports Talk Philadelphia. It's great to have you guys along again. Don't forget to follow us on our social media, Twitter and Instagram at Sports Talk LTV. And that's all we have for today's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you again next week.